maybe just linking onto what Ansi has said, we pick up in the King report that there's reference, for example, to moving away from the principle, and I hope you're sitting tightly in your seats, but moving away from the principle of saying that you should pay as little tax as possible, and that's just no longer good enough, and that there's perhaps another standard. Andre, can you perhaps tell us a little bit about that kind of concept that we find in the King report?
Yes. Thanks, Jaak. That is quite an interesting aspect, and I think in light of some of the happenings globally around tax-related and structuring-related matters, it has become quite an interesting aspect to debate. But I don't think it just relates to tax and tax planning. I think there are quite a few related areas where one can apply this. If a company wants to be a good corporate citizen, and as Ansi has already said, it means by implication that you need to take into consideration the environment in which you operate. One of the very interesting and perhaps startling changes, it's not really a change, it was there in the underlie of King 3, and certainly in the New Companies Act there's reference to it, but is the huge emphasis on stakeholder involvement. Now, if we look at the traditional company setup, directors act in the best interest of the company, and they have essentially one goal, and that is to make a profit for shareholders. That's the traditional role. And if you test a number of decisions that directors take from that perspective, the decision becomes easy, because it's really about where can I maximize my profit? And if the answer to that is X, Y, Z, then that is what I do. The New Companies Act has introduced the term stakeholder, and there are some references to it. But now with the King 4 report, it is much, much more emphasized. A stakeholder essentially is any person or entity in the environment that has an influence on the company and the way in which it operates. Now that can include communities in an area where you are doing business. The environment, obviously the green type of issues. The tax authorities, the government of the day. And so you can go on and on to list stakeholders. That is a very, very significant departure from the traditional role where a director is responsible to a shareholder. You can almost now see or equate it to having an additional quasi-shareholding type of situation. It's not really that bad, but that certainly is what it boils down to. You no longer only look at your shareholder, but you also look at the stakeholders. Tax authorities would certainly be one of those stakeholders. The King Code, perhaps in the draft, fairly controversially states that as part of your corporate governance obligations, you have to ensure that you are taxed in the jurisdiction that you are based in, which creates quite an interesting dilemma for directors who are trying to ensure that their tax base is made as small as possible so that they can maximize profit. Again, we get this balance between how can I maximize profit, paying the least amount of tax, perhaps even moving some of my business affairs to a different jurisdiction because I can save some tax, as opposed to the stakeholder involvement where I need to pay my tax or I need to comply with environmental legislation and the like. And the interesting question obviously then becomes, how do I weigh up these responsibilities and make a decision at the end of the day as to what is in the best interest of the company, and how do I comply with those obligations?
Yes, and that's very interesting. And of course, as lawyers, I guess we'll wait to get an instruction to make sure that we pay the maximum tax in South Africa. But I think there's underlying principle, and the point is well taken. Ashton, I want